Are you keeping livestock in this house? This must be feed for livestock, right? You weren't seriously thinking of feeding this to Billy, were you? Unbelievable. Isla, my mother-in-law, said this as she threw my cooking, dish and all, into the trash can. What? Your family can't possibly be my family. The only family I have is Mommy. How long are you going to keep saying such stupid things? While we're at it, let me say this. The value of my mommy and your family is completely different, isn't it? I think anyone can see that. My head, which had been filled with anger until a moment ago, had now completely cooled down. I truly despised my husband, William, who insulted my family and laughed loudly. Mommy is moving in next month. Clean out your room. William pressed the point with a loud voice, seeing that I didn't reply. Hey! Are you listening? Mommy is moving in next month. I'll be away on a business trip until then. During that time, clean up all your stuff, completely. Got it? As William glared at me with harsh words, I smiled and said, Okay, I'll make it nice and clean. Then, I went back to my bedroom. I once thought you, William, were a wonderful person who valued family. But in reality, you're just a pitiable person who can't even have his own opinions, dominated by Mommy. To you, I was not family. I wouldn't mind whatever you said about me alone. But you used cruel words against my precious family, too. Unforgivable. As you wish, I'll clean everything out completely, so look forward to it. You should go to hell with your beloved Mommy. I'm Emily, a 35-year-old housewife. I married William last year, and it's been exactly 1 year. I met William at a drinking party hosted by my friend. It was a sort of party for men and women over 30. William was there, having been invited by an acquaintance. Among the men there, William, who is tall and slim, stood out. At the beginning of the drinking party, there was a slight buzz among the women. However, after hearing William speak in a quiet, hard-to-hear voice during his self-introduction, the women quickly backed off. Indeed, William seemed to give off a gloomy vibe when he spoke, which didn't appeal much to the women. But I, sitting nearby, didn't miss William's self-introduction. The most important thing to me is family. William indeed said that. My heart was moved by his words, and I found an opportunity to talk to him. I also believe family is the most important thing. We're the same in that regard. At that moment, I felt like William's eyes sparkled behind his glasses. After that drinking party, through the friend who had organized it, I surprisingly received a message from William. After several dates and finding that we got along well, we started dating. William, who was quiet at the drinking party, usually turned out to be quite talkative. Most of what William talked about was his family, mainly his mother. I really respect my mother. She gave birth to me and raised me. I'm just grateful. She's the most important person to me. Saying this, I found William, who cherished his family, to be endearing. Just like William, my family is also the most important and irreplaceable thing to me. I have a father, a mother, and a much younger brother who is in college. There were times when my father's business didn't go well, and we fell into poverty. But no matter what, we always supported each other with smiles. Because of those experiences, I'm convinced that our family is bound by a strong bond. Currently, all my family members except me are overseas due to my father's work. I stayed in America because of my job. If I hadn't married, I might have moved overseas eventually. But then, I met William. Feeling that William, who also cherishes his family, could live together with me, I felt hopeful. My mother said she thinks I could be happy living with you, Emily. So, let's get married. And so, a year ago, William and I got married. After a year of marriage to William, there are several things I've come to realize that I didn't know before. The first thing is about William's personality. Hey, Emily. My favorite shirt isn't in the closet. Make sure you take care of it. William, who was thought to be quiet due to his soft voice when we first met, turned out to be quite self-centered. Moreover, the name he used to sweetly call me honey changed to Emily the day after we got married. I was honestly surprised at first, but I didn't particularly mind, thinking it meant we had become closer. More than that, I wish he would spare me the irrational yelling. "If you're looking for that shirt, you told me yesterday to take it to the cleaners. So, I dropped it off today. It'll be ready tomorrow." To my words, William visibly became angry. "If I told you yesterday, you should have taken it out yesterday. Then I could have worn it today. Think before you act. My mommy would never make such a mistake." Saying this, William left the house. A mistake? It was natural to take it to the cleaning today after being told last night. No matter how much I try to argue, my reasoning doesn't reach William. And in the end, Mommy always comes into the conversation. Another thing I've learned after getting married is, William truly does place family first. Cherishing family is good, and I too hold my family dear. It's because of this shared belief that William and I got married. However, it seems William's vector on this is a little different. William's mother, Isla, dotes on William excessively. And in return, William does whatever Isla says. I've met her several times, such as during our marriage introduction, and remember being bombarded with questions about money, like, "What's your annual income? What does your family do?" Fortunately, I have been working at the same company for many years and have a decent amount of savings and salary. I somewhat understand that this was a point in favor of allowing the marriage. Even so, I thought it was natural for a parent to worry about their child, so I let it pass. When we decided to get married, since I had been living in a relatively large house with my family, William moved into my house, and that's how our new life started. While discussing how to arrange the rooms, William said with a laugh, "We're not planning on having kids, so let's have separate bedrooms. Mommy said kids are noisy and a lot of trouble. She doesn't want me to go through that hardship because she's kind. Plus, she said it would be hell if the kid ended up looking like Emily." The thought of our decision about children being influenced by his mother-in-law's opinion made me dizzy. At that time, I thought that eventually William would want children, so I went along with it. However, an off-putting incident occurred later. One day, Isla announced she would be staying overnight at our place. She had visited our home many times before, but always returned to her own home at night. This was the first overnight stay. William was delighted to host Isla, and I hurriedly prepared the guest room. But William said, "It's okay, Mommy will sleep in my room." I didn't understand what he meant by "it's okay," and when I tried to prepare a guest bed in William's room, he refused. To my shock, when I went to wake them up in William's room the next day, they were sleeping together in the same bed. It's fine for a parent and child to be close, but sleeping in the same bed seemed a bit too much. I felt like I had seen something I shouldn't have, and quietly left William's room. After that incident, I was completely turned off and realized I would no longer share a bedroom with William. Another thing I learned after getting married was William's view on money. Perhaps due to Isla's influence, William believes all the money he earns should be spent on himself. Therefore, he contributes no money to the household. I've asked William multiple times to contribute to living expenses, but he ended the conversation with, "Mommy said the money I earn is mine, right? By the way, the money Emily earns is also mine since Emily is my wife, so it's only natural. So, shouldn't Emily be the one to cover living expenses?" So, William never contributes financially to our household and keeps buying expensive bicycles, claiming them as his hobby. He even built a shed in the garden without consulting me to store these bicycles. Every day, when I see that shed in the garden, I'm filled with indescribable feelings. With Isla coming over so often, is your father-in-law okay with it? One day, I finally asked Isla, given how frequently she visited our home. That man is on a solo assignment in the countryside. As long as he sends money every month, There's no problem at all. I felt sorry for the father-in-law who was working away from home. William, for all his talk of valuing family, seemed to only truly care about his mother, Isla. Today, Isla is at our house again, enjoying the meal she prepared. Of course, I also prepared a meal. But Isla threw it all away. Are you keeping livestock in this house? This must be feed for livestock, right? You weren't seriously thinking of feeding this to Billy, were you? Unbelievable. Saying that, she threw the dish into the trash can. Ignoring me, stunned, Isla started cooking. Without a word, she cut meat with a knife and then used the same knife to cut fruit. Chills ran down my spine. What are you looking at? It's creepy. There's nothing for you, so figure something out yourself. Of course. I was secretly relieved. Seeing William enjoy Isla's carelessly prepared meal, I felt anxious about our future. This is how Isla frequently came and went from our house, harassing me and then leaving doted on by William. Ever since I saw the two of them sleeping in the same bed, I had been finding excuses to refuse Isla's overnight stays. It was too disturbing for me to accept. Perhaps because of that, Isla's visits to our home became more frequent. When I returned from work, Isla was often already in the living room. And often, William was home at times I expected him to be at work. Hey, aren't you supposed to be at work? Finished early? If I asked William, he would reply, took a day off because mommy is coming over. Taking time off so frequently for his mother's visits made me wonder what we would do in the future. Internally, I felt dejected. If he loves mommy so much, maybe he should have just lived with her forever. After Isla left, I asked William, I want to ask, why did you marry me? William seemed surprised by my question, but his response came quickly. Mommy said, why don't you get married once? That's why I went to that party. Emily seemed compatible, and her family looked wealthy, so mommy said, isn't she good enough? Knowing he decided on marriage as casually as picking a watermelon with mommy at the supermarket made me want to sigh. At least I felt affection for William, who was kind and a gentleman until we got married, and married him because I loved him. But William didn't have a bit of affection for me. William's everything is Isla, and her word is law. For the first time, I seriously considered divorce that I had been avoiding thinking about. Can I really continue with William? Thinking, I let out a real, big sigh. One day, when I returned from work, I felt a slight discomfort in the living room. The room seemed unusually tidy. I realized what was causing the unease. This house was originally where I lived with my family. So, I had kept our family's belongings, but now they were gone. The small bookshelf my brother made for me in school, the painting by my mother that we had framed, the souvenirs my father brought from abroad. The ring and pendant my mother gave me are gone. When we got married, my mother, who couldn't come to Japan, sent me a gold ring and pendant as a gift. I had kept them carefully in a case in my bedroom. All the precious items given to me by my family were missing. I frantically searched the entire house. My bedroom, William's bedroom, even the shed William built in the garden. But they were nowhere to be found. As I stood in the living room in a daze, William, who seemed to have been out, came back. What? Why is your hair all messed up? Seeing me disheveled from searching desperately, William laughed. Desperate for confirmation, I asked William, the things I received from my family are missing. Do you know anything about it? The answer I received from William was shocking. Huh? That dirty junk? I got rid of it. It was always in the way. Today was bulk trash day, so I threw it out. I was stunned by William's words. Despite it being my property, despite them being precious gifts from my family, William said he threw them away. The ring and pendant that were in my room? You threw those out too? When I pressed him, William responded with a displeased look. I don't know, maybe I threw it out? That junk. I could feel anger rising in my head. How could you do whatever you want? Those were my precious things. Why did you throw them away? Startled by the volume of my voice, William momentarily flinched but quickly glared back and retorted. Isn't what belongs to Emily mine as well? Mommy said so, right? So what's wrong with me throwing away my stuff? And why are you still clinging to your trash-like family? You're married to me now, aren't you? Cut it out, it's disgraceful. I couldn't believe William's words. Isn't it William who's abnormally attached to his family? Is he calling my family trash? William was making unbelievable statements, leaving me unable to think clearly. Trash like family. That's my family you're talking about, you know? They're your family too, aren't they? Why would you say something so awful? At my counter-argument, William looked perplexed. Huh? How could your family be my family? My family has always been and will only be Mommy, you know? How long are you going to keep saying such stupid things? Since we're on the subject, my mommy and your family are of completely different values, don't you think? Anyone could see that. All your parents managed to produce was an Emily like you. That's why they're trash parents. But my mommy, she gave birth to me. See the difference? It's probably too hard for Emily to understand. Yeah, it's impossible. Ha ha ha. My head, previously boiling with anger, had now completely cooled down. I utterly despised William, who insulted my family and laughed loudly. And with William's following statement, my heart grew entirely cold. Mommy likes this house. So, I've decided to let Mommy live here too. When I said nothing, William spoke with a slightly angry tone. What? Got a problem? It might have been your house originally, but now it's my house too, you know? If you don't like it, we can just get divorced. Saying so, William thrust a divorce application at me. The form was courteously filled out and signed by William. This must have been Mommy's instruction. Did he think this would make me compliant? I couldn't even sigh anymore. Mommy is moving in next month. Clean out your room. To my silence, William emphasized loudly. Hey, are you listening? Mommy is moving in next month. I'll be away on a business trip until then. During that time, clean up all your stuff, completely. Got it? In my head, I thought, what a loud voice. As if his hard-to-hear self-introduction when we first met was a lie. Facing William's glare, I smiled and said, Okay, I'll make it nice and clean. Then, I went back to my bedroom. Returning to my room, I immediately started packing. Although my anger towards William hadn't subsided, receiving the divorce papers was convenient. I paused my packing to make a phone call. After making a couple of calls, my spirits began to lift. I once thought William was a wonderful person who valued family. But in reality, he was just a severe mama's boy who only loved Mommy. It's good to cherish your mother. But you were too severe. Being dominated by Mommy to this extent and not having your own opinions as an adult, I can't help but feel sorry for you. I tried to love your Mommy too. But it was impossible. I'm sorry, but I can't and won't fit into the world you and Mommy have. To you, I was never family. I wouldn't care what you said about me alone. But you used terrible words against my precious family too. Unforgivable. As you wished, I'll clean everything out completely, so look forward to it. You should go to hell with your beloved Mommy. That day, my mobile phone's ringtone echoed from the morning. The screen displayed William. It must be William returning from what he calls a business trip. I was expecting a call around this time, but I wished he had spared me the early morning disturbance on my day off. I touched the screen to answer. Before I could speak, William's angry voice came through the speaker. Hey! Emily, what have you done? The house is gone. What's the meaning of this? William sounded quite panicked on the other end. What happened? Didn't you say to clean up all my stuff completely? So, I did just that. My words left William speechless. Yes, I did exactly as told, cleaned up all my things. After my family went abroad, the house was in my name. My father said I could demolish it or sell it if I wanted, but I had wanted to live in it a bit longer. The day William told me to clean it up, I consulted with my father. After sharing everything, my father suggested selling the house, so I took action. I immediately contacted a real estate agent, sold the house, and it was demolished. Now it's just a clean vacant lot. You're insane. Where's the furniture, my stuff? Where did it go? William asked in a feeble voice. What happened to his earlier bluster? Not just the house, but the furniture and household goods were all mine from before I was married. So, I got rid of those too. Oh, your belongings are all in that shed you're so proud of. When selling the land, I left just a small space of about 2 tatami mats in the corner of the garden. That's because it housed what William spent his money on, a shed for William's valuables. Expensive-looking bicycles and a few other items were crammed into that shed. William's stunned reaction was palpable over the phone. Then, Isla's voice chimed in. Emily, what is this? Where's Billy's house gone? I've brought the moving truck with all the stuff. What are we supposed to do now? Say something. After everything, they've always decided everything selfishly, so they should figure this out themselves. That's what I thought as I listened to Isla's tirade. You know, Billy is your husband, isn't he? What's with that attitude? I'm the mother of your husband. A wife should just quietly listen to her husband and mother-in-law. Such an unreasonable accusation. What do they think the role of a wife is? I'm glad I acted before my dignity as a person was stripped away. With all due respect, Isla, I am no longer a wife. I informed Isla that William had thrust a divorce application at me, and that I had recorded the conversation when he did, using a voice recorder. Since William's verbal abuse worsened after we got married, I had started carrying a voice recorder. The divorce application he had pushed at me was already signed, so I just added my signature and submitted it to the office. So, Isla and I are now complete strangers. The phone went silent. Just when I thought it was over, Isla's loud voice erupted again. Then, you should give me money through the distribution of property. The house and the household items were marital property, weren't they? Since it has to be divided between Billy and me, give me the money. I took a deep breath and explained to Isla. Well, the house and all the household items were used by me since before I was married. William is aware of this. And William has never contributed financially to the house since we got married. So, there's no marital property to speak of. Oh, that shed over there was built with William's own money. Technically, that would be subject to distribution of property, but I don't need it. From the other end of the phone, I could hear Isla's voice in disbelief. Is that all? Indeed, that's all there was. In 1 year of marriage, that's all we had managed to accumulate. And it was something only William wanted, not something I needed. The irony of the situation almost made me laugh. What was this marriage period for? She should be grateful that at least that meaningless shed remains. By the way, the land where the house stood has been sold to a real estate agent, so you'd better move quickly before you get into trouble. The shed's location is safe. For now, that small space is still my property. But please remove that shed soon, or I'll have to take legal action. The word legal action got a reaction from Isla. I could hear her grinding her teeth in frustration. What about William? He hasn't said a word for a while. Hey! Billy, don't cry, be strong. It's okay, just do as Mommy says. Apparently, William was crying. Such a childlike man. His boyishness once seemed charming, but now he's just a pitiable mama's boy. Yeah, that's right. Just do as Mommy says, then with that woman. William's words were cut off mid-sentence. Probably Isla covered his mouth with her hand. Because it was inconvenient for me to hear. But it's too late. I've meticulously gathered evidence, so rest assured.
So, where are you now? We're coming over, so tell us where.
I refused Isla's demand. It took me a bit of effort to find a temporary home for myself. There's no way I would tell them that easily. We're strangers now, so I don't think we'll ever meet again. Oh, and you'll be hearing from my lawyer soon, so please deal with that. In my hand were several photos. They showed William, Isla, and an unknown woman. These were taken during the period William claimed to be on a business trip. A friend who organized the drinking party where William and I met happened to see the three of them on vacation. The photos captured moments of William and the woman entering a room alone and leaving together in the morning. Why? How did it get out? A faint voice from William reached me. He still had the energy to speak, which was surprising. The friend said that after we got married, he continued to host parties regularly. Recently, to his surprise, William started attending again and hit it off with a woman, returning home with her. The woman seen on vacation was undoubtedly the same woman.
But Mommy said a man has to have an affair at least once. She said since this woman is prettier, I should have a child with her instead.
I was shocked by William's outrageous statement. Again, Mommy's orders, but adultery is adultery. Whether it's Mommy's orders or not, I won't be lenient.
Whatever you say, I look forward to the compensation in the divorce trial. The identity of the woman is known through a friend, so I'll be claiming compensation from her as well. Since William has no fixed address, a formal notice will be sent to his company. Thank you.
As I said that, William's crying voice came through the phone. I could even hear Isla's comforting, there, which almost made me nauseous. I wanted to hang up, but there was one more important thing to discuss.
And Isla, the police might come to ask you some questions, so please cooperate with them.
There was no response from Isla. She probably knew what this was about.
Isla, you stole my precious ring and pendant, didn't you? In the photos of this affair trip, I can see Isla wearing my ring and pendant. I will never forgive you. By the way, I've already reported this to father-in-law. He was furious. He said he's going to divorce you, so you'll get your wish of living a dream life alone with William.
I was about to hang up after saying that. Just before the call disconnected, I thought I heard an indescribable scream from Isla. Looking outside the window, it was about time for the sun to set. I wonder how those two will spend their night. Well, they have that shed, so they'll be able to shelter from the rain and wind for a while. That's the least I could do for them. Honestly, I couldn't care less. I feel like I can sleep well tonight. The first to pay compensation for the divorce lawsuit was the woman William had an affair with. She worked at a nightclub and included an apology saying it was a momentary lapse of judgment. William, on the other hand, had to resign from his job voluntarily after a formal notice of his infidelity reached his employer, making his position there untenable. Father-in-law covered the compensation for the divorce lawsuit in full, but said he would relentlessly reclaim it from William. Isla was faced with divorce papers from father-in-law. Apparently, her overprotectiveness towards William had always been a problem. This incident made father-in-law lose all patience. From now on, Isla won't receive a penny. In fact, she's dealing with the police over suspicion of theft. Isla repeatedly claimed inheritance among relatives, but since cohabitation between me and Isla was not recognized, Isla ended up with a criminal record. Now, William and Isla are renting a small apartment, living modestly while working part-time. The shed has been removed, and where my house once stood, a new home is being built. I hope the people who live there will be a warm family. I prayed quietly in my heart. Rolling my carry-on, I walked through the airport concourse. The thought of seeing my beloved family soon filled my heart with joy. I'm about to fly to the country where my family lives, to start a new life. I hurried towards the boarding gate.
My ex-girlfriend's in trouble.
I have to go pick her up.
My husband said this as he gazed at a woman as if he was drawn to her. I was astonished and dumbfounded by his sudden outburst. It happened on our wedding day, as we were driving to the venue. He slammed on the brakes and stopped, seeming to watch the situation for a while. The woman my husband was looking at was carrying a heavy load of luggage, struggling with it. And then, suddenly flustered, he said to me,
"You're in the way. Get out, now."
"My name is Harper. I'm a 29-year-old nurse. I met my husband Kevin, who is the same age as me, through a friend's introduction. I'm so busy with work, I hardly have time for dating. But if I meet the right person, I'd like to get married." I had said this absurd request to a friend, who then told me,
"I know someone perfect for you. I'll bring them over sometime."
And she went out of her way to arrange a meeting just for me. At that time, I was working hard as a nurse. I thought I would like a man who could take the lead, someone manly. Kevin was exactly the kind of man I had in mind. He took pride in his work and seemed serious, tackling everything with confidence, which I admired. I hadn't talked much with men outside of work, so I was nervous, but Kevin said,
"Being a nurse must be really tough. Especially now, I'd imagine healthcare workers are under a lot of mental and physical stress."
and showed concern. Those words were very comforting to me. I said,
"Yes. It's tough, but seeing you, Kevin, makes me think I need to strive harder."
And he seemed embarrassed. I was drawn not just to his serious side, but also to how he had a cheerful side as well. Our relationship smoothly progressed to marriage. I felt that with him, I could continue my life without changing much, supporting each other. I loved my job, so it was natural for me to continue working after marriage. However, one day, my husband approached me with an angry look, saying,
"There's something I want to talk about."
I wondered if I had done something to upset him, when he suddenly said,
"I want you to quit your job."
I was shocked, but tried to remain calm. "Why?"
"I love my job, so I don't want to quit."
"Did I do something to upset you?" Then,
"How do you think it looks when my wife works harder than me? From now on, you quit your job and focus all your energy on housework, and I'll support you, okay?"
he commanded in a tone of authority. It was the first time I saw this side of him, and it felt strange. I told him, "If you wanted a housewife, you should have said so before we got married. Then we could have discussed it." He responded quietly,
"I've never seen someone so dedicated to their work and striving for perfection. I thought it would be helpful if you became a housewife after we married, since I'm not good at household chores."
I got mad and said,
"Then why not hire a housekeeper? Or is it that you're fine with anyone who can do perfect housework for no cost?"
He replied, "Don't be ridiculous. Of course not. I wouldn't live together if I didn't enjoy being with you." I was very conflicted but decided to try harder since we were newlyweds and I still had feelings for my husband. After some thought, I said,
"If that's the reason, I'll try a bit harder with the housework. I don't plan to quit my job. At least wait until you can cover the living expenses for 2 adults on your own before saying such things."
And continued to work. Perhaps because he got really upset, he didn't just refrain from doing household chores, he started monitoring everything I did. Naturally, my workload only increased. Being employed, there were days I had to cut corners on housework. Then, as if he had been waiting, he would say I did this wrong or didn't do that, almost triumphantly. Fed up, I told him, "I get that you're not good at housework. It doesn't have to be perfect. But since we're both working,
I'd appreciate some help." He sighed in exasperation. "That's why I've been saying I don't want to do housework, because I'm not good at it. Balancing work and housework is tough, so you should just quit your job." And was unwilling to listen. I couldn't stand it anymore, saying, "When will you understand that we can't make ends meet without both incomes? If we lose my salary, we'll barely cover the rent and fixed expenses." But he didn't care. My husband changes the topic quickly whenever it comes to his earnings. He said, "Abigail did things more perfectly, you know." It's surprising how there can be such a difference between women. No matter how good you are at your job, failing at housework, which is a woman's job, means you're failing as a woman. Be thankful to me for marrying you despite your imperfect housework skills. Abigail was the girlfriend my husband had before me. Being compared to an ex-girlfriend after getting married made me angry, but part of me thought there was some truth to his words. Even if I'm somewhat respected at work, as a woman, I lacked appeal. Not just because I was married, but I was aware of my lack of femininity. I knew this about myself, but hearing it from my husband made me even more determined to prove him wrong. However, the reality is we couldn't live on my husband's earnings alone. So, I continued working while becoming more efficient at housework. My husband always looked for chores I hadn't done, but eventually, he had nothing to say because I did everything perfectly. Only then did peace return to our home. One day, we had a dinner planned with both our parents. My mom asked about the wedding, and I spoke enthusiastically about my dreams. "I've been saving up because I always wanted to have a ceremony. I want it to be a glamorous event that everyone enjoys." My suggestion received claps of agreement from my mom and my mother-in-law, Avis, but my husband said, "Do we really need to go all out? Plus, the guests don't care about what we like. They think it's a hassle, worried about the gift money, but go anyway to avoid being called uncaring or bad at maintaining relationships. They just go because they have to. No one is moved by seeing someone else's happiness anyway. Aren't you watching too much drama?" Laughing, he completely dismissed my idea. I had never once thought like my husband at any wedding I attended, so I was angry, thinking such people shouldn't bother attending. My husband went further, saying, "Besides, if you have that much saved up, I'd like a piece of it as a reward for sweating it out all day at work. Yeah, I want a motorcycle. Let's save on the wedding and honeymoon and buy my bike instead." And that's what he did, moving forward with the plan to save as much money as possible to buy his bike. Glancing at my parents, I saw their faces tense. It looked like they were holding back what they wanted to say. That's when the in-laws spoke up. "Kevin, enough is enough. Dismissing your wife's wishes and only thinking about yourself. How can you think of using the money Harper saved for the wedding on a motorcycle just for you?" They were angry. My father-in-law, Lanny, added, "People have different views on weddings, so it's natural for you and Harper to have a difference in opinion. But to outright deny her and then insult her, only wanting the money. Do you realize how ugly that makes you? If you continue like this, you'll be divorced before you even get married." And scolded him. I told my husband, "I've never once been to a wedding where I didn't feel moved or enjoy myself. When I see a happy bride, I naturally tear up, thinking how the groom must cherish his wife, thanking them for the ceremony. Some friends even planned events to ensure the guests enjoyed themselves, and it was truly fun. But you think differently, and that's okay. How about we save on the wedding and spend more on the honeymoon instead?" The in-laws scolding him made me happy, but no matter how much they reprimand him, it means nothing if he's not willing to change. I was ready to compromise and have the wedding his way when he said, No, it's fine. I'll grant all your wishes. If you liked the weddings you've been to so much, why don't we make it even better than those? He suddenly became serious. My husband doesn't like being compared to others. And being told by his parents that we might end up divorced seemed to have made him reflect. Our parents looked relieved and advised. It'll be busy, but try to talk as much as possible. It's wrong to force only one's opinion, but it's also wrong to stay silent. Make sure to express your feelings to each other. Seeing the way her son was behaving, Avis seemed to imply that she knew he would come around.
Way to go, Kevin. I knew if we just talked to you, you'd understand. Look, Harper, how about this cute dress? It suits you so well,
she suggested with a smile while flipping through a magazine.
Harper, please don't hesitate to say anything. If money is an issue, we can figure something out,
she even offered. Feeling it was too much, I mentioned we would manage within our means, but I was touched by how much the in-laws were looking forward to the wedding. My in-laws had always treated me like their own daughter since we started dating.
If Kevin ever does anything terrible to you, let us know right away,
they continued to say. From there, we were able to smoothly proceed with the wedding preparations. My husband became enthusiastic, saying, "We're going to make this a ceremony no one has ever done before." He began researching in books and online, becoming more proactive in making suggestions than I was. Looking at other people's weddings, Kevin said, "This is nice." Seeing him smile naturally made me feel the beauty of weddings was getting through to him, and I felt reassured. We both like to delve into things until we are satisfied. Meetings with the wedding planner often made the day fly by. Despite being busy, discussions with my husband were peaceful, and those days felt enjoyable. Finally, the day of the wedding arrived. It was a scorching summer day, but the weather was clear, so I felt relieved we could have the ceremony without any issues. My husband was eager too, and we got up early, fully prepared and left. He was driving us to the venue. We would arrive with time to spare if we drove as usual. That's what I was thinking, looking forward to it, when he suddenly hit the brakes. I asked,
"What? What happened?"
Startled. There was no apparent danger, and I couldn't understand why he had stopped so abruptly. Then he said,
"I'll pull over for a bit."
And he pulled the car over. Suddenly, he said,
"Yeah, I thought so. Abigail is there,"
and stared at a woman walking on the sidewalk for a while. I was shocked and dumbfounded by his sudden outburst. It seemed Abigail was struggling with heavy luggage, occasionally stopping to rest. From my husband's reaction, I wondered if he was considering helping her because she seemed to be having a hard time. Though I felt complex emotions watching him stare, I was relieved when he started driving again. Honestly, I felt he might still have feelings for his ex-girlfriend since he always compared me to her. My husband compares everything I do to his ex-girlfriend and complains that I'm not good enough. I was worried such a thing wouldn't happen on our wedding day, but it turned out to be an unfounded fear. However, once we lost sight of Abigail after several failed attempts to see her, he pulled the car over again, looked at me, and smiled.
"You're in the way, so get out of the car."
I was so shocked, I went blank.
"What? Why? She didn't even ask you to give her a ride, and you're going to go talk to her? You know it's our wedding day today, don't you?"
I asked, but he said,
"It's too much for her to carry all that luggage. Just listen to me,"
and forcefully dragged me out of the car.
"You'd better not follow me,"
he said, and drove off alone. After that, I was too stunned to think and just stood there. I couldn't catch up to the car even if I returned now, and I couldn't call him because my wallet and phone was in the car. I was gradually getting so angry that I didn't feel like having a wedding, but I thought that I would cause trouble if I didn't contact the venue, so I walked towards the venue alone. Even if Kevin didn't show up, I thought I could explain that my valuables were left in the car and the in-laws would help bring them back. Thinking about what to do next, I arrived sooner than expected. Having left home early and the distance not being too much, I managed to arrive on time for our appointment with the venue. However, it was honestly exhausting because I kept walking under the scorching sun without a parasol. As I entered the building and was about to rest, there was my husband, looking utterly dejected. It was understandable that he arrived before me since he was in a car, but why was he here if he went to see Abigail? As I pondered this, Ava seemed to notice me and rushed over in a panic.
Harper, I'm really sorry for our foolish son. It was hot, wasn't it? Are you okay? Here, drink this.
And offered me water. After gratefully accepting the water, I asked my husband, "What happened to Abigail?" Then he bluntly explained,
"She said she didn't need help and ran off. Plus, some guy I don't know shielded Abigail and took her away. So, I had no choice but to come here."
He seemed distant. As I looked on bewildered, the in-laws scolded my husband.
"As we said before, it's unbelievable that you would leave your wife on your wedding day to approach an ex-girlfriend. We don't expect you to be forgiven, but you need to apologize sincerely."
Leaving him utterly disheartened. Ava sadly shared, "Actually, we were too excited and arrived way before the two of you. When Kevin arrived alone, we pressed him about where you were and then understood the situation after hearing the story. I then asked my husband, why didn't you come back for me after Abigail declined? She got really mad at me. Called me a monster. I just lost all motivation to do anything. I figured if I came here, you'd show up eventually, so I thought I'd just wait for you." He responded. Looking closer, I noticed his cheek was swollen and red, later learning that Lanny couldn't hold back and had hit him. As we struggled to shift our mood towards the wedding, Abigail arrived. By her side was an unfamiliar man, introduced as her husband. Abigail's husband glared at Kevin.
"Trying to forcefully get a resisting woman into your car, then running away at the sight of someone's face. I heard from Abigail. Weren't you the one who kept pestering her after you broke up? And it's your wedding day today? Leaving your own wife to hit on your ex is the lowest of the low,"
he said, visibly angry. Abigail then looked at my husband with disdain before turning to me. "We did date, it's true. But we broke up, and I have no interest in him anymore. I never imagined he would leave his wife on his wedding day to approach me. I'm really sorry." I hurried to stop her apology.
"Don't be. The one at fault here is him. Don't apologize."
Relieved by my words, Abigail let out a sigh. My husband, losing his target for anger, glared at me, tears spilling from his eyes.
"If you had just stopped me, this wouldn't have happened. You should have stopped me. Don't you feel any pain seeing me blamed like this?"
Disgusted, I was about to retort that he should take responsibility when Abigail and her husband began berating him. Abigail firmly stated,
"Enough is enough. I kept quiet because the nuisance was only towards me, but now you've bothered not just your wife but also my dear husband. I won't let this go easily."
Her husband also scorned.
"Who do you think you are? Hurting both your wife and another man's wife and then playing the victim?"
I then asked Abigail, "You and your husband did nothing wrong. Instead, we're deeply sorry for the trouble caused by him. Based on his words, He was actually trying to reconcile with you, wasn't he? She sighed deeply. Actually, our home and Kevin's family home are quite close. He's ambushed me pretending it was coincidence multiple times, demanding reconciliation. I've always rejected him clearly but quietly, fearing his quick temper. I kept it from my husband, but I regret not telling him sooner. Before nodding, her husband added, I understand why my wife couldn't tell me before. Seeing how unreasonable he is, arguing wouldn't have made a difference. I don't blame her. I felt they were a wonderfully considerate couple, and even thought they were strangers. I was glad that Abigail found such a good person to marry. I desperately apologized to Abigail. It's okay. If anything, we're the ones who should be sorry. Even when you said you were busy with work, he was imposing on you. I'm truly, deeply sorry. Then, to Kevin, who still looked unconvinced, I yelled, You should apologize too. Your actions have caused trouble for many people. What are you going to do about it? But he only frowned. It was Abigail's husband who got angry at such a demeanor. No need for apologies. With that look on your face, I can't expect any sincere remorse from you. Anyway, I want nothing to do with you. Promise never to go after another man's wife again. As he yelled, Kevin stepped forward in front of Abigail's husband, his face turning red. Abigail was with me before she met you. So, I understand her better than you do, right? I want to get back together. If you're lonely being single, I'm open to swapping wives. Let's do that. She's hardworking and has money. Kevin spoke as if it were a brilliant idea, uttering nonsense. Not only I, but also Abigail and her husband were left speechless by the absurdity of it all. Seeing him talk happily about the day we'd divorce and that he'd marry Abigail made up my mind. Anyway, let's cancel the wedding. I told my husband and apologized to the in-laws. I'm sorry. I know you were looking forward to today, but as you can see, I cannot marry him. I'm sorry for turning out this way after all your kindness. Then the in-laws tearfully apologized, saying, You've done nothing wrong, and we think you're making the right decision. It's our own child, but we think he's truly foolish. We're sorry for all the trouble. Looking around calmly, I saw many venue staff members watching us. Checking the time, relatives and friends were soon to arrive. Feeling guilty about sending a cancellation notice now, I spoke with the staff to change the wedding to a dinner party, deciding not to accept any gifts. The venue staff, accustomed to handling crises, arranged the dinner party efficiently, though they cast blameful looks at my husband, for which I was grateful. My husband, unconcerned about the attendees, kept cheerfully talking about his new life with Abigail while I was talking to the staff. Seeing him able to talk such nonsense in front of Abigail and her husband, who looked at him with disgust, was appalling. After the explanation, I went back to my husband and told him I agreed to the divorce. As expected, he was not even slightly sad but instead delighted to accept. Right then, guests started arriving. My parents, in-laws, and I kept apologizing to everyone, asking them to at least enjoy the meal, making an awkward excuse. I never intended to share such a ridiculous story with the guests, but my husband happily announced the wedding cancellation and our divorce. The people who arrived on the dot were confused by the sudden cancellation. Moreover, when questioned by the guests, my husband calmly continued his delusions about finding true love and marrying the person he truly loved.
Abigail! This is beyond not making sense anymore. Please, run away with your husband now.
I quietly pulled Abigail aside and handed her over to a staff member, and they quickly left through the back door. Just when I thought things would calm down, my husband, noticing Abigail's absence, flew into a rage. Seeing them walking outside the window, he started chasing after them in a panic.
Abigail, wait. Come home with me, not with that guy. Enough. What's wrong with you? Stay away from Abigail and get lost.
My husband was easily stopped by Abigail's husband as he dashed out of the venue. Then my dad and Lanny caught up and restrained him, dragging him back inside the venue. I followed, apologizing to Abigail and her husband repeatedly as I saw them off. The attendees, having witnessed the whole sequence, were thoroughly dismayed, leaving the venue telling my husband he was the worst. While feeling sorry, there was a part of me that felt it couldn't be helped since my husband's rampage was unstoppable. In the end, only my friends, my parents, and the in-laws remained, showing concern for me and helping me regain some peace. After the cleanup was done in the heavy atmosphere, my husband again said,
"Now that the cleanup is done, it's all good, right? Then I'm going back to Abigail's house."
Saying that, he tried to leave the venue, so the in-laws, in tears, forcibly put him in a car and took him home. A few days later, with the in-laws present, I had my husband sign the divorce papers, and we officially divorced. His belongings at home were either carried out by the in-laws or sent via mail. It was a hectic time, but it finally ended. One day, I went to a town in the suburbs to refresh and coincidentally met Abigail and her husband at a shopping mall. I was worried about how they were doing after everything, so when I asked, they shared their updates. Apparently, my ex-husband hadn't learned his lesson and had been lurking around the places he met Abigail, and even stalking her at home and work. My ex-husband had been saying,
"We're still in a relationship, right? You were just playing hard to get, weren't you?"
and continued to demand a reconciliation, cherry-picking facts to suit him. Finally, Abigail consulted with the police and initiated a lawsuit against him. Thinking he did nothing wrong, my ex-husband spouted delusions even in front of the police and was deemed a dangerous person. Immediate action was taken, and he was issued a restraining order against approaching Abigail. Surprisingly, he lost his momentum as soon as the restraining order was issued. It was only after facing legal action that he realized Abigail truly detested him. Since then, he has stayed away from Abigail's surroundings. It doesn't matter much to me, but if this means he won't bother Abigail and her husband anymore, I'm relieved. Abigail continued,
"Actually, we're moving close to my husband's parents' home soon. We came today to buy cleaning supplies for the move. Harper, please take care of yourself too."
As I apologized and saw them off, they left with smiles. Watching their backs, I silently wished them happiness. This resolved the issue. The moment I thought to delete my ex-husband's contact, he called me. I had kept his contact for property distribution matters, but never expected him to call. I truly didn't want to answer. But I had just met Abigail and her husband. So I answered, slightly anxious.
"Can we just forget about the divorce? Living alone made me realize how important you are to me. Let's try living together again, cooperatively,"
he began to say. After pondering his words for a good dozen seconds, I calmly replied,
"You must be joking. We're strangers now. No matter what you say, I have no intention of remarrying you. Please, don't contact me ever again."
Then I hung up, setting his number to auto-reject after he kept calling back. He continued to make a fuss on the other end of the phone, but now I was completely free of him. He tried calling from different numbers for a while, but as I continued to ignore them and changed my phone and number, I finally found peace. Since the house was sold, there was no issue even if he showed up unannounced, and there was no way for him to contact me. Abigail and her husband had already moved, and if he showed up at my parents' home, they would be furious and chase him away. The in-laws, having given up on my ex-husband after this incident, decided to sell the house. This house is close to Abigail's parents' house, so we decided to sell it now. Seeing Avis and Lanny tear up was hard, but I wished for them to live happily, far from my ex-husband. Without a home to return to, Kevin must be wandering alone now. Without knowing each other's whereabouts, and having caused a scene at the wedding, he was isolated by rumors among friends and at work. A friend who worked at the same company said his ostracization at work was severe. Truly a case of reaping what one sows. I hope he genuinely reflects on his actions. As for me, I started a new life from scratch in a new place. I had an opportunity and transferred to a new hospital. My current workplace allows for a balanced work life, enabling me to juggle household chores and work. I'm happy to engage in fulfilling work in a new environment, where I'm also building good relationships. Although divorced, I'm far happier than when I was living with my ex-husband. I've rediscovered my love for my job. I hope for continued peaceful days.